Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this panel. I'm Sirab Malti from the School of Hospitality, Business and Management at Mohammed VI Polytechnic University. And I am extremely pleased and honored to welcome to this panel Sonia Omar, Fundraising and Communications Manager at Education for All Morocco, and Hind Barnoussi, Communication Manager at 1337 School in Ben Guerir. So before joining Sonia and Hind, I want to talk a little bit about the reason why we're discussing this topic here today, which is the evolution of the right to education. So the reason we chose this topic as part of the ABS Diversity Week is that we all agree that education is the bedrock that will provide the necessary foundation to support diversity. And as such, diversity cannot thrive in a society if access to education is hindered for parts of the populations, whether because of their gender, financial means, geographical location, to name only a few of the discriminating factors. So throughout the discussion today about education and how it affects diversity, we will first have a global outlook on the topic, as it does remain a worldwide concern. Then we'll move on to sharing our experiences here in Morocco with the endeavors of 1337 School and Education for All. And we will end with the way forward and how we can work towards sustainable solutions. So throughout this session, please feel free to comment or ask questions in the chat box, and we will be happy to answer and adapt to topics that you would like to address. So now, without further ado, I will leave the floor to Hind for a little introduction to hear more about her experience with diversity and what drives her to be here today.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for welcoming me in this panel, Diversity Week. I'm Hind Barnoussi. I'm Communication Manager in 1337. I'm really glad to join all this wave to discuss about diversity and about woman place in this topic. I don't know if we could start talking about that, or if we leave place to Sonia to start talking about the subject.
Yes, maybe we'll have Sonia give a few words, and then we will jump right into the topic.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. And yeah, an amazing title, The Evolution of the Right to Education. And I'm so happy to represent Education for All Morocco. And it's a charity that is giving access to probably one of the most forgotten groups in Morocco, which is girls from rural, remote areas. And we focus on the High Atlas region of Morocco, where illiteracy rates for women and girls can be as high as 70%. And that's mainly due to just a lack of transport and obstacles to just actually accessing the schools. So we build boarding houses and staff them and equip them beautifully. And more and more communities are happy to send their girls to live with us during the week and access school. And so I'm really excited by this discussion, just to share a little bit how that access to secondary school for teenage girls in rural Morocco is making a generational change, which will impact on all of Morocco, inshallah, in a very positive way. So thank you so much for the space to introduce myself.
Thank you, Sonia. And we will launch a little video about Education for All before we move on to discussing the topic.
My advice to all the girls in my village and in other remote villages is that you have to be educated. I don't educated just like to know to read. No, I'm educated in all terms, to have your own personality, to have the ability to see, I want this, I don't want this, I want to be there and I don't want to be here, and to say what is inside you and what does hurt you and what does make you happy. Do not hide what you feel because you want to make other people happy. You have to make yourself first happy.
So just to say a little something about that clip, it was a film project in 2019 by some independent filmmakers who were very moved by what our organization was doing. And the film is actually 20 minutes long, and we can perhaps send it after this discussion for those of you who would like to see it. And it's told only in the voices of the girls and the house mothers of the project.
Thank you, Sonia and Hind, for this short introduction. This bodes well for our upcoming talk, as I feel you both have exciting and inspiring thoughts to share with us. So as the conversation moves along, we'll probably talk a lot about girls' education in Morocco, with the amazing work that is being done by Education for All, as well as the life-changing opportunities that schools like 1337 offer to girls. But as I mentioned earlier, diversity, or lack thereof, I should say, is a vast and global issue that doesn't end with this particular topic. And equal access to education specifically remains a worldwide concern, affecting populations regardless of the country or region they live in. So Sonia, according to you, what are the determining factors that are shaping our societies in a way that these patterns keep developing, and how do you think the cycle could be broken? Sonia?
Yeah, this is a great question. Well, as I mentioned, there are some very practical, perhaps easier obstacles to remove, and they're obstacles of infrastructure. So the fact that there are no good roads from villages in the High Atlas, for example, to the towns. There is no public transport system, not really. There are a few school buses, but not many. So that's an infrastructural issue that can be solved by governments by creating better roads and a safe public transport system for young people, and one that families would trust the girls to use, of course. So that's one element. Of course, we exist because that doesn't exist. So in a world where there were better transport links, perhaps we would not be needed, and for now we are. But there are other things that are harder to change, such as attitudes to educating girls. And in rural areas of Morocco, the communities are very traditional and gender roles are very defined. So it is just considered normal for a girl to stay at home, help her mother with all the housework, help bring up the siblings. So if there is an opportunity for schooling, the girl is less likely to get it. Of course, a charity like us is also dealing with that, because we are encouraging the families to let their girls be with us. It supports the families economically because we take the burden of feeding their daughter, caring for her, and so that takes off some financial pressure for very poor families. However, the girls are now starting to positively role model what it looks like to be a girl in school. So that is affecting the communities. So in the beginning, it was harder to convince the families, and now it's very, very easy because of the evolution of the girls going through our program and being an example, and the family seeing firsthand that there's no threat to educating a daughter. In fact, there are many benefits for the family. So yeah, I would say it's really two types of things. One is maybe more ingrained stereotypes and gender definitions that need to be opened up, and that's an evolution that happens in all countries. And I'm from the UK. Well, it wasn't always the case that women went to university, for example. Now it's normal, but 50 years ago it wasn't. So I think all countries have an evolution in terms of opening up opportunities for all people, regardless of their backgrounds, regardless of their gender. And I think in rural areas of Morocco, it's just they're a bit further back perhaps than the urban areas. So changing attitudes and really considering infrastructure. And I think I'm really interested to hear Hind share more about her program. But one thing we really see in rural areas that's a huge obstacle to learning is also the digital divide. So, you know, young people from these villages, they don't have access to their own devices, computers. It's harder for them to access online learning, which was a huge problem during the pandemic and the lockdown. We had, you know, our girls literally in their villages without access to any education at all for 3 months. So this is also something we need to look at going forward. Digital equality for people in rural areas, especially girls, improving the infrastructure so it's easier for girls to go to school, building more schools is also important, more schools in rural areas, and changing attitudes in the communities by showing the positive impact of educating girls. And that's all from me for now.
As you said, Surab and Sonia, the problem is not specific to Morocco or Arab world. It's really a global phenomena. And if we talk about the specific field of coding, or what we call the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics field, we see that women held only 25% of job on technology. That came from girls who are less likely to study STEM subjects comparing to boy. It starts from, like what you said, Sonia, it starts from the beginning, from the high school. And the numbers decrease when we see on the research, it decrease on the university. That's come from different reasons. First of all, maybe women feels or girls feel that they could give birth in humanities, or because they could not find themselves that field are interesting, which are wrong reasons, or because they could think that it's not relevant for their career path, or even the teacher or the family environment makes the STEM subject appear unappealing. And all that fact makes that the girl are not finding that field as attractive. Why? Because they don't have enough information about that, if we are talking about that specific kind of field. Or even when you talk about that, we will see a testimony of some girl. We can see we are talking about the environment and about the family. They are not suggested to go to a career in tech in their environment. Or as you said, Sonia, there are not enough female role model in the society. Despite the thing that many of brain behind some of the biggest achievements in the industry was made in that field by a woman. Like, for example, like the world's first electric computer was made by 6 women, and there is no recognition behind that. So all that facts made that there is no reference or no encouragement for girl to go to discover this field and to do a lot of things, a lot of different things to be like one woman who can give something to the society or to create something new.
Thank you, Hind and Sonia. And what I gather, one of the main points that I gather from both your interventions is that sometimes the girls' own beliefs, or at least the ones of their families and society, can shape or hinder their ability to project themselves in the future in a career, etc. On looking at our school, the School of Hospitality, Business and Management, we have about 23 girls out of 26 students in the cohort. So I agree we have to work on male gender representation. But still, we're very happy to have that many girls with us at the school. And because the hospitality industry has been one that for long encouraged gender stereotypes, you would think that those girls would fit in the boxes that the industry has shaped for them. But I'm amazed to see how they actually set themselves to achieve goals that are far beyond that. They want to be change makers, they want to become leaders, entrepreneurs, and they all really have a vision for what they can bring to the industry and the country. So, of course, there's still much to be done, but there is hope that things are evolving. And maybe we will see a short video on 1337, where we will see the girls from the school talk a little bit about their experience. I think they're in the best place to describe that. And then maybe we will ask Sonia, I know that Education for All has been recognized in Morocco since 2006. So I'm sure that, much work has been done for sure. And I'm sure there are a lot of changes that the organization has witnessed over the past decades. So we would be very interested to hear about that. So let's start first with the video of 1337.
بالنسبه للدومين د لافورماتيك اولا البروغراماسيون، لا بالنسبه للدراري ولا البنات ما عمرها كانت كتبان ليا بانها مشكل زعما بالنسبه للبنات بانهم ما يقدروش انتغريو هذا الدومين حيت كيجيهم صعيب. ولكن امتى تاكدت بانه بصح كاين شي بنات اللي كيشوفوه شي حاجه اللي صعيبه ما يقدروش يديروها، هو فاش مثلا كتلاقيك الصدفه بشي بنات مثلا اولا غير لونطوراج ديالك كيقولوا لك شنو هو الدومين ديالك، كتقول لهم بروغراماسيون، تجيهم شي حاجه اللي اكسترا اوردينير، شي حاجه اللي واعره ما يقدروش انهم يديروها، ما يقدرش اي واحد يديرها.
انا طرات لي مع شحال من بنت ملي كنبدا نشرح لها شنو كنديرو وكذا كتقول لي زعما سي فريمون انتريسون. ما عمرني ما كانت عندي هاد الفكره ديال اولا فكرت انني نجرب ونشوف راسي واش غادي نلقى راحتي فيها اولا واش غنبدع فيها ولا لا. من الاول صافي البروغراماسيون ديال الدراري كثار وفهمتي هما اللي تيخدموا بزاف، زعما اون جينيرال تيكونوا الدراري هما اللي تيكوديو بزاف على البنات، حتى البنات كيكوديو ولكن تيكونوا قلال مقارنه بالدراري.
كيرجع هادشي للتخوف ديال انه كيجيهم واحد الدومين اللي هو صعيب بزاف، وهادشي غادي يكون بزاف ديال الامور اللي هي امور ثقافيه، كيفاش ترباو في المجتمع.
من صغرهم كنربيوهم على انهم اش بغيتي هذاك الشيء اولا ما كتفهميش مزيان في هذاك الشيء، خوك غيفهم ليه احسن منك اولا. هادشي اللي كيخلي البنات كيتخوفوا.
في لاج اللي هو صغير الاغلبيه ديال الدراري كيكونوا محتكين بلي زورديناتور لي جو فيديو اكسيتيرا، الوغ كو البنات اللي تيكونوا مشغولين بامور اخرى مثلا كيكونوا سون با انتريسي بداك الدومين.
ولكن هما علاش مافونسين؟ هما مافونسين حيتاش كتلقاهم ديجا توشا في البروغراماسيون ملي كانوا صغار ولا شي حاجه، يعني حتى هو راه طاح في هذوك لي ديفيكولتي اللي انا يلاه كنطيح فيهم، يعني حتى هو راه تقاتل، حتى هو راه ما فهمش، حتى هو راه دوز مع شي بروبليم بزاف الوقت وداك الشيء، يعني راه حتى انا عادي واخا هذا ما كانش حيتاش انا بنت راه غادي كنتعطل هو كي افونسي.
وسبب اخر اللي كيبان لي انه كيأثر بزاف هو ان في لي ميديا ما كنميدياتيزوش مزيان المراه العالمه، المراه الكودوز، المراه لاسترونوت، المراه الساينتيفيك.
الكودين شي حاجه اللي متعلقه بالكرياتيف، والكرياتيف تقدر تكون عند اي واحد، بنت ولا ولد يقدر يعطي في داكشي اللي باغي هو.
سورتو حنا كنخدموا مع دي ماشين، انت قدام لا ماشين ما كتفرقش واش انت بنت ولا ولد، كتشوف واش داكشي خدام ولا ما خدامش، واش الكود ديالك كيتيكزيكوتا ولا لا.
ستادير الكودين ماشي شي حاجه اللي صعيبه انه تقتصر فقط على الدراري ولا على العنصر الذكري. تكوني خدامه في شي ابليكاسيون اولا دخلتي شي سيت اولا شنو، شحال مره كيجيوك بزاف ديال الافكار كتقولي ما كانش عليهم يديروا هكا، كون غير داروا هكا في الناتور ديالنا كتلقانا كنبروبوزيو دي سوليسيون. يعني الا جينا درنا البروجيكسيون على داكشي في البروغراماسيون ممكن نبدعوا شحال من حاجه.
ولا في ديال انك تلقى ان بروبليم وتحلو، ومني كتلقى داك لا سوليسيون وكتضارب معاه وكدير واحد الوقت طويل باش تلقى ديك لا سوليسيون، كتحس بواحد لا ساتيسفاكسيون زوينه.
كتبدا تخدم دي بروبليم وكتبدا تلقى دي سوليوشن راسك، تقاتل معاهم راسك وكتلقى الريزولطا اللي بغيتي، كتقول وا فينالمون راه بحالي بحالهم، راه سكي بوف هما يديروا حتى انا جو بو لو فير و جو بو لو فير ميو. بالنسبه للكودينغ هو واحد الدومين اللي ممكن تخدم مع اي دومين، ممكن تخدم مع الميديسين، ممكن تخدم مع ليدوكاسيون، ممكن تخدم مع في الجيمنج، اي حاجه كنخدموها بالكودينغ، اي حاجه ممكن نبروغراميو فيها. يعني ديما كتبقى اجور، ديما غادي مع لا طوندونس، ديما غادي مع اخر تكنولوجيا في العالم. شي حاجات اللي زوينه كتحس براسك الحياه في الخدمه ديالك، ماشي لاغوتي اللي كديروا اليوم كتعاودوا غدا.
ديجا ليدي دو كومباري لا فام مع الهوم كتجيني غالطه، راه سون دو زونتيتي ديفرون. الراجل راه ماشي هو المراه، راه بو اكسيلي في لو دومين وكل واحد بطريقته، ماشي بالطريقه اللي كتخدم بها المراه بالضروره اللي تكون راجل، ولكن زعما كتكون لو ريزولطا مزيانه. يعني نفس النجاح كيكون عند الراجل وعند المراه.
سوفي جوست ان تكون لا باسيون، تكون لا بيرسيفيرونس، تعطي كل ما عندها في الدومين، وفينالمون غادي تلقى الريزولطا اللي بغات، كو سوا في الكودين او لا اي دومين اخر.
وهذه هي الفكره اللي خاصها تكون عند اي بنت كتفكر ولا كيعجبها هاد الدومين، انها خاصها الا بغيتي تكملي فيه خاصك تخدمي وتقاتلي باش توصلي.
That's such an inspiring video. And I don't know if you want to say a few words. Yeah.
They summarize everything I can say about girls, about coding, about the energy that all women can have and all women can bring to the technology and to the STEM. The woman and the girl have really their place in their field and in the society. The only thing is that they have to trust in themselves, and we have just to push a little bit to make them having their place there. And as I said, they summarize everything, and how best than them to say everything by themselves. I could testify but they said everything, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. They said a lot, and it's really inspiring, and it gives hope and for an evolution. And going back to that topic, Sonia, if you could share a bit with us how you've seen this evolve through education for all.
Yeah, this is a lovely video, Hind. I would love the EFA girls to see this, because I think confidence is an important part of their evolution and their education. And we don't just focus on their academic studies, but we really focus on their ability to realize their own potential, because that's what gives them the confidence, that's what motivates them. And the way they see this is in interactions with other women. So one of the things we do is we run a volunteer program. So they meet women, some quite young women who are almost like their own age, maybe 18, 19, and also older women from different countries, the US, Australia, the UK, France. And the volunteers will spend maybe 3 to 6 months with them. And that's really helpful because, of course, the volunteers help them with their studies, language skills. I mean, these girls are speaking 4 languages by the time they leave the boarding houses, because they speak Tashtahit, and then they learn Arabic at primary school, and then they have to learn French, and then now more and more English. So they've got a lot of big jumps to make from a very rural education, which is where they start. And so we bring these volunteers in to help them, but it's more that just them being helped with their studies. It's that these women are role models. They're example of, first of all, women who are traveling. They're traveling, they're volunteering, they're benefiting other communities in other countries. They're independent. Some of them are teachers. They've had careers or are about to start careers. You know, we had one young woman from a school who'd been sponsoring us and giving us donations for many years. One of the students came and volunteered for 4 months, and now she's working in Cairo for the UN World Food Programme. So they see these young women, and it's an inspiration. Just like the young women in your video, Hind, they are an inspiration for what is possible. And if you can see it, you can be it. So the girls from the EFA houses in particular, they don't grow up with these role models because their mothers are illiterate, their grandmothers are illiterate. That already has an impact. I mean, I spoke to someone who who works for us, whose mother is from Ouarzazate, and also could not go to school because there were no schools nearby. So she was an illiterate mother. And she said that she remembers how lacking in confidence her mum was because of the inability to read a medicine bottle, for example, or read the ingredients on a food packet. So I think these girls growing up, seeing their mothers in very traditional roles with this lack of confidence is something in their hearts too. And so to open them up to other possibilities is a really important part of their evolution. And I would love to somehow connect with you, Hind, and also just to connect some of those girls, to tell our girls, you can also go for science. You don't have to just go for humanities subjects. And we had once a woman scientist from NASA in the US, and she wrote to us and said, I'm traveling in Morocco. I heard about your project. I'm a NASA scientist. I'm a woman. I would love to speak to your girls about going into professions where you feel they're not for girls, not for women. And so this kind of thing, it's really, it's extremely important. And the girls just love it. They just get completely excited by these worlds that open up for them. So yeah, that's all I have to share for that.
For sure, I'm totally agree, because those who taste that, they love that. But there is what we call a plafond de verre. I don't know how we could say that in
a glass ceiling.
A glass ceiling,
yeah.
Because they still believe, and there is it's really a fact. Women, when we still talking, as you said, they believe that they could give birth in humanity despite medicine, for example. We have a lot of women who choose medicine, etc. But they think that they have normal, they don't have a place because it's a man, it's men's jobs, or equality will decrease with rise in seniority, etc. Which could be things are changing with these decades. Things are changing, but for sure equality decrease with rise in seniority. Many of girls or women earn less than their male counterparts, or they are more likely to be perceived as incompetent in this field, or they are likely be pushed to non-technical role, etc. So all that makes them not comfortable to go there. And as you said, they don't have to think no more that technical is for men's and not for women. And we have to start working since the family, since the youngest girl. If you want to do something, you can do it, despite the gender. Because as I like to say, the STEM, the digital, the technology, and the coding have no gender. The brain have no gender. It's enough to want to take the place, to feel motivated, to feel capable of creating something, to impact and to create the world that we want to live in. And that's the only thing that's important, I guess.
Thank you, Hind and Sonia. And you both mentioned many ways that we can enable girls to build confidence and So mentorship programs, having role models coming and talk to them. Also, you mentioned earlier probably the COVID situation and how this had contributed to bridge the gap even more, and that we could, those problems are problems that are easier to solve because they're just material problems, or it's like building a road or giving iPads to the it's not easy, but it's still, it's more of a material way to help solve the problem. And looking at the way forward and how we can make this approach sustainable, to make sure that we really break the cycles and the paradigms, and that we're not offering temporary solutions to the problem. Are there any other ways that we can achieve that with those girls, with people who don't have access to education in general?
Yeah, I think I can say something there. Time. We need time to let things evolve. And I think it's really important to focus on organizations that have the experience and the expertise to contribute to areas where there is a need for empowerment or something like access to education. I think it's really important for, I would say, for Moroccans to also look at these organizations and support these projects. Most of our funding comes from outside of Morocco, where there's probably more of a tradition of this kind of charitable giving, but we can't run our project without funds. So everything we do is donation based. So I would encourage that, especially now there's a growing generation in Morocco of young people who are successful, probably also maybe Moroccans coming back from outside of Morocco and starting things. I would really encourage anyone who's starting their own business, even if it's a small business, to look for organizations in their country, in Morocco, that are supporting areas where there's still no infrastructure and there's still no commitment. I think there are great things happening in Morocco, especially in terms of equality of opportunity. And I see certainly in urban areas, very empowered women, educated women, and that's great compared to other areas of the Middle East. Morocco has a great reputation there, free education up to university and women being included. So this is it's a good, good words for what's happening in Morocco, but just not to forget the forgotten communities. And that's especially rural and hard to reach areas. So I would say to invest in education, because, and especially girls, because there is a huge impact on society when girls are not educated. Believe it or not, it decreases the GNP. It lowers the GNP in the country if you don't educate girls, because there is a huge missing piece in the economy when women are not contributing. I think also the work you're doing, Hind, getting girls into coding, and you never know what they can do if they're contributing in those fields, especially as they're fields that haven't been so open to women. So I always think, the cure for cancer could be with a woman from, a country in an area that no one suspects. So give everyone an education so we can give everyone the potential to contribute to the world that we live in. Let's not leave anyone out. So yeah, thinking big, supporting areas and organizations who are doing such great work, and then the attitude changes that I think that just comes along with the overall evolution of everyone. The world's getting smaller. Technology is taking away national borders, actually. So we all start to become part of a global human family. We use technology in ways we've never done before, and the more technology evolves, the more we're all evolving with it. So I trust that we're moving in a good direction, but just to think, what can I do to support others? So yeah, I see there's some questions coming up, actually. But yeah, I'll pass over to you now, Hind, and maybe some of these questions, I'm not sure if they're relevant now.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said, Sonia, and with what we had experienced this past year with the pandemic, with the lockdown. We had the illustration and the proof that the word is at the point in time where most aspects of our working and our personal life are becoming shaped by technology. And concerning the education, we saw that Ministry of Education made everything to make education closer and closer, even for the rural persons to be closer to the education, etc. And as 1337, we participate to help the ministry to make application and for Tilmitis, for Masar, etc. to make education closer to students and to girl, boy, etc. So we had to go to the technological way for education and even for the all aspects of our life. We said, you know, like 1 year or like 2 years before, we said that world is going digital. Everything will go in digital, like 40% of the new jobs will be digital. And the pandemics show us that everything will go in digital, will be impacted by the digital and by the technology. And it's time even for education to think digital and technology. And women, girls and women have to take the lead and take the place to participate on that. Why? Because everything is, or most of things are designed by men. So the way, as you said in the video, the way of a woman is thinking sometimes is different. So things which are designed by men for men and women is totally different, and how women could think the thing and design the thing. So I think that women have a place if she is educated, she is taken in charge, she is having a role model, she having a reference to play really a role to bring more women aboard in the tech industry and in education in the society in general.
Thank you, Hind. And indeed, we have a few questions, and one is, how can public and private sectors effectively work together to support girls' education? So we will start with this one. Sonia, do you have any thoughts on that?
Funding. I think the private sector has a huge role to play in using its profits to really contribute to societies. We do have more and more corporate partners who want to donate to us, which is great. But of course, in the ideal world, the boarding houses that are so important to ensure girls are educated, these could be funded by the public, by the government, and also with some private sector support to sponsor also this facility. Yeah, so I think it's about really just pulling a lot of resources together, because the expertise to run these houses is great. I think perhaps the education in rural areas needs some attention, and trainers need more resource, teachers need more resources. They need probably more manageable classroom sizes, bigger schools and more teachers, so that the kids are not going through, having to rotate lessons because the classrooms aren't big enough, for example. So there is some public sector support needed, and also maybe the private sector to bring in some funds and to offer that training. Also maybe offering internships for young people, especially girls in the kind of STEM area also. So I haven't thought so much about this topic. I can answer more the next question, but Hind, maybe you can say more there.
Yeah, I don't know if Hind can hear us, but yeah, thinking about, I mean, it's a bit maybe more far-stretched, but to me, I feel like, and looking at our experience and again, the hospitality and tourism sector, is that those girls or those populations who don't have access to education, they need the ability to dream and to really have an ambition, and that they have that those dreams have to still be achievable to them. And I think there's a role of the public and private sector that they should show those girls that there is a place for them in the companies, in the public sectors, and it starts with them changing how they welcome and how they help and how they accompany those girls in evolving in their careers. That is going in the end to give the younger ones the ability to dream of that future for them. I think that's really important, and we start to see in all those big companies that they have diversity and inclusion departments, and I sure hope that it's not just for the sake of having them, because it is a current and popular topic, but that the companies are really going to start making changes and giving those girls the ability to dream. So maybe we'll move on to the next question. And this one, I think, Sonia, you can answer in terms of statistics. What is the enrollment rate of young rural girls in Morocco compared with boys? And according to you, what are the main causes that contribute to early women dropping out of school?
Yeah, so this is a great question. I think from what I know, the statistics are not 100% clear in terms of enrollment rate in rural areas, but I do know that girls enrollment rate is much lower than boys, and that's for the reasons I spoke about at the beginning of my presentation. Families are more reluctant to let their girls make the journey to school, or there is just no transport. Or families are very poor and need to keep the girls at home to help with, extra work. I know in some villages, actually, the girls get recruited to be maids for wealthier families in Morocco, and that's to supplement income for the family. So there are major issues of poverty, and I know boys also leave school to work as well. But I do think the girls are definitely impacted a lot more. But the main causes that contribute to early dropout of school, that's a really good question, because the dropout rate for teenage girls compared to teenage boys is very high. One of the main reasons for that is families wanting girls to get married. And again, coming from more traditional families, it has been normal for girls to marry quite young. And so a girl to complete her education and to be 18 is considered quite old for some of these families in terms of marriage, believe it or not. This is changing, but there's still this attitude that it's better to get the girl married really as soon as possible. And one impact of COVID, sorry, let me just go back one step. What's so good about the Education for All boarding houses is that we have the girls in the houses. They are less under pressure to get married because they're with us. But during COVID, when they had to go back to their villages for 3 months rather than be at the houses, the pressure for marriage started to mount whilst the girls were at home, not really being able to do very much, and then suddenly they get kind of taken back into their cultural realm of discussing marriage and considering suitors. So there were some girls that didn't come back after the lockdown ended because they had already got married. So the boarding houses are a bit like an intervention that make it less of a risk that girls will drop out. And we actually ask the parents to sign a contract when the girls come to us saying, you will not take your girl out until she's completed her 6 years with us. So that's something that we're trying to also show, well, get a commitment from them. So I think the biggest reasons for dropping out would be marriage, believe it or not. Yeah.
Thank you, Sonia. And maybe we'll move to the next question for Hind, which is, how can we encourage girls to follow STEM branches?
Simply as first changing mentality in the family environment, and from an early age, really from an early age. There are no specific, as I said, no specific job for specific gender. That's really the first thing. And the second for me is to be present from the start in the school, in the education, in the college, in the high school, etc. That's what we was doing at 1337 before the pandemic. Like we organized visits for students, for the surrounding school and villages who came to the school, and telling them, okay, 1337 is a coding school. There is a girl, there is a guy. The school is open 24/7. You look at this amazing place, etc. The school is free. You don't need you don't need a degree, etc. You don't need to know the coding, etc. But finish your study. That's you need to finish your study, but it's not necessary to have a degree. Just to tell them, okay, it's not a school for genius or things like that. You can't come here because they see a lot of IMAX, they see a lot of sick, and they said, okay, maybe it's not for me because I'm living in small villages or I'm living not downtown, etc. And they see that beautiful school, etc. And they could say it's not for me. No, we said that it's for all and it's for free. Just study, just come to the school. Even if you never code before, the place is yours. If you have a motivation, if you want to do something, the place is yours. So we try to go to the school. We welcome a lot of young people. We had the project to do a workshop for coding, for robotics, etc., and to create even a space in Khribga, in 1337 Khribga, to do regularly this workshop with young people, to demystify also this area and convince women that she has their place in this area, for example, in the STEM area. And as you said, Sirab, the company also have to play the game. It's a both side game. So if they know that they would have a place, or they could they could create their startup, or they could have a high places, etc. in the company, maybe they could trust themselves more. So maybe they could be a way of change.
Yeah, I think we all have a part to play in the schools, in the industry, in the public sector, to encourage those girls to go to school, be it in STEM branches or any other branches that may not be like the most evident path for girls, at least in the mind. As you said, there are no specific paths for girls or guys, but yeah, and for sure, there has been some evolution, but there's still work to be done, and it leads me to the next question about how can we improve the capture rate of girls' education in rural areas.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It basically does require the input from many different areas, as I mentioned earlier. You know, for governments to give attention to the rural areas. The Minister of Education did come and visit us and was very inspired by what we're doing. And so, you know, we hope that eventually one day, rather than these houses being a charitable activity, they're actually part of the infrastructure of Morocco. And of course, we have so much experience that we could contribute to that. And I think it's also the support of individuals like you, Aziz, you know, young Moroccans being interested in education in rural areas and using your business or your innovations and your own ideas to see how to best support that. You know, fundraising for projects to maybe build boarding houses, or supporting organizations like us who've got great experience in building and running boarding houses. So I think it just takes the whole of the Moroccan society coming together, recognizing that, oh, there are these rural areas and life is very different there, extremely different there. I mean, from Marrakesh, a half an hour drive into the mountains to where our three of our 6 boarding houses are, it's a completely different world. You cannot even compare. So I think visiting these areas, looking seriously at the organizations doing work there, please look at Education for All. Please be in touch with me if you have any questions. Look at our website, follow us on social media, and see the positive stories coming from girls who are receiving an education, going on to university. We have 2 girls studying a master's degree now in Marrakesh. You know, their families don't even know what a master's degree is. They're the first, not only in their villages to go to university, but they're the first in the whole valley to go to university. So these girls are trailblazers, like the girls that spoke in your video, Hind. So get to know the power of reaching these rural areas, open your own mind up to what the rural areas in Morocco are, and see these girls as representing the power of, you know, coming from these areas but having an education, because that's the only thing that's been holding people back in the rural areas is really a lack of education. So speaking up for increased infrastructure, sharing the positive stories of organizations and the girls who benefit from them, and thinking seriously about what you can do with your education, with your resources, to support equal access to education, which will improve Moroccan society. As I mentioned earlier, the economy improves, the overall health improves, illiteracy rates drop, even climate change can be managed better when girls are educated, because they become women that make choices about family that have a huge impact on the climate agenda, for example. Having smaller children rather than having many children, having slightly smaller families, which in turn supports the environment, it supports our planet. So I can't say enough how important it is for a society to have educated women. It also leads to more peace and security, because women are, you know, they see what's going on in the family. They're more likely to notice if a child is being radicalized, for example. So, you know, an educated woman has a very important role to play in so many areas, and creates a healthier, happier, more prosperous society.
Thank you, Sonia. You mentioned the girls that went on and studied a master's degree from the Education for All program, and I know that Education for All does prepare girls, like does provide education at for secondary school level, but I'm sure that it does much more beyond that to help those girls that are studying have their high school degree and then move on to higher education. So what are all those other things that you do to prepare them for the after Education for All and the after boarding house part?
Yeah, that's a nice question. I was trying to find a photo of our first ever master's student I'm not sure if it's in my folder here, but we actually don't officially support girls after they leave EFA. So our mission statement is to give girls access to and support them to complete their secondary education. However, we can't forget them when they leave. So we are in touch with the girls, and we are of course supporting them. We did have a volunteer that was with us for some months, and she created a kind of a boarding house for university students because she had a riad in Marrakesh that she inherited from family. So she turned it into accommodation for girls at university, and of course took many of the EFA girls as part of that. That project's called Dar Mustaqbal. So that's a place for the girls to live, because, you know, if you go to university in Marrakesh, it's free, but you need somewhere to live. And they, of course, don't have the finances, or maybe the families don't have the finances to support them. So we gave a small bursary to the girls just to get started, so they have some, you know, they can get some accommodation. Usually it's the university accommodation, which is, you know, only needs quite a small kind of amount of money to cover that. And a lot of the girls, they come back to the houses, they take counsel with the house mothers about things. So I'd say in the kind of EFA family domain, we give a lot of support. However, we have thought about how we can actually support these older girls more. We would like to find good internships for the girls, or good projects for them to be involved in after they've done the baccalaureate. Maybe in the summer holidays. Hind, I'm already excited about thinking, can we somehow work together and get some of the EFA girls, you know, at one of the STEM schools, because I think just the more opportunities they get after university, the better. After lycée. And we are partnering with a university in Casablanca called SIST that has given to date 5 EFA girls scholarships, full scholarships, to live in Casablanca and do their business management degrees, for example. So yeah, I think the more networking and outreach we can do to support these girls post their education is really key, because it's not necessarily an easy time for them once they leave us, because they don't have the financial support maybe that some people would. But we're doing what we can to support them. And I did interview one of our girls who's now in Casablanca on a full scholarship on our Instagram account. I've been doing lots of interviews with different women who inspire and support us. And I interviewed one of the girls, Rita, who is from a village where she very well would have become a child maid. And because her mother heard about EFA whilst being in the market one day, this girl came to us, spent 6 years with us, and that is now on a full scholarship at this institution in Casablanca. So this is just an example of how we can, at least through those 6 years, put them in a position where they can still flourish. But, you know, even if they stop after us, even if all they do is get the baccalaureate, it still has a huge impact on the evolution of a woman's role. You know, to be an educated mother, that's something no one can ever take away from them. It will affect her decisions, even if she goes back to the village and marries and has children. It's a completely different future from the future her mother had, for example. So this, we're completely satisfied that the change is already great, but of course we want the girls to realize their full potential. So any ideas you have, please let me know.
No, I'm sure that it might not be the most tangible, but just the fact that they are cared about in those boarding houses, and that they're open to all the opportunities, to diversity. And I'm sure there are some other activities that you do for them. I've seen that you organize trips to different regions in Morocco. So I'm sure all this, it might not be a tangible contribution to their future, but it sure prepares them and opens them to what's coming after the lycée or baccalaureate. So our last question is in French, so I will briefly translate it. It says that Morocco is one of the countries that counts more female engineers for the moment. And the question is how we can make this a sustainable in the long term, and how can we make this case of the engineer, the female engineer, be spread to other domains, other sectors?
Alors, vu que la question est en français, on va y répondre en français. Vous savez que selon l'UNESCO, ce n'est pas que le Maroc. Et pour rapporter une note positive à tout ce discours, 34 à 57% des STEM graduated dans les pays arabes sont des femmes. Et c'est beaucoup plus qu'en Europe ou aux États-Unis. Donc, il y a vraiment une note d'espoir. Depuis tout à l'heure, on parle des STEM qui sont beaucoup plus orientés vers que les hommes choisissent beaucoup plus les STEM que les femmes. Dans le monde arabe, les femmes choisissent beaucoup plus, comme vous le posez dans la question, beaucoup de femmes ingénieures et beaucoup de femmes marocaines excellent dans ce domaine. Comment pouvons-nous faire pour faire en sorte que cette avancée soit sustainable à long terme? C'est comme un peu ce qu'on a dit tout à l'heure. D'abord que la femme croit en elle. Il y a plusieurs phénomènes. Il y a d'abord le phénomène où la femme va faire de longues études, et appelons un chat, va faire de longues études, et après ces études, elle va choisir une carrière familiale, parce que c'est aussi une carrière. Et donc, elle va mettre de côté ces études-là. Il y a aussi celles qui vont entreprendre ces études-là et puis à la fin vont faire un autre métier qui n'est pas totalement le métier d'ingénieur, le métier de leurs études initiales. Pour les diverses raisons dont on a parlé tout à l'heure, le plafond de verre, que en fin de compte, j'ai fait ce métier-là par passion, mais en fin de compte, c'est un métier d'homme. J'ai fait du génie civil, j'ai fait du coding, j'ai fait tous ces métiers-là, mais en fin de compte, c'est un métier d'homme. Mais comme j'aimais ça, j'ai fait ces études-là, ou la carrière familiale, comme on a dit. Et comme une des autres filles, on l'a pas, parce que la vidéo était très longue, donc on a fait une vidéo très courte. Comme j'ai aimé une fille qui disait, au fait, le domaine du coding, par exemple, quand on choisit la carrière familiale ou pas, on peut coder de partout. Même si, quel que soit le choix de vie qu'on fait, on peut devenir entrepreneur. On n'est pas obligé de travailler pour quelqu'un. On peut allier entre sa vie personnelle, sa vie familiale quand on est une femme, sa vie de maman et sa vie de codeuse, de développeuse. Donc, comment faire pour que ça soit sustainable à long terme? C'est que, encore une fois, que tout le monde joue le jeu. Je vais vous faire une confidence personnelle. J'aime pas beaucoup faire ces panels parce que, en fin de compte, on fait ces panels une fois par an. On parle une journée de la diversité de la femme. Et puis, on ferme ces débats au bout d'une heure et puis on rentre tous chez nous, c'est bien joli et puis rien n'est forcément fait. Il faut qu'on y pense tous, que qu'est-ce qu'on apporte chacun à cette société? Qu'est-ce que l'homme apporte à la société? Qu'est-ce que la femme peut apporter à la société? Comment on peut tous contribuer à ça? Qu'est-ce que, comme on a dit sur la question précédente, le privé, le public, la famille peuvent apporter pour qu'on change tous? On a vu, comme on a dit avec la pandémie, que tout devient digital, tout devient technologique. Si on ne prend pas conscience que nous devons tous jouer un rôle, femmes et hommes, pour pouvoir faire avancer les choses et que dès le plus jeune âge, on break down tous ces stéréotypes et qu'on laisse à la femme la place qui lui faut et qu'elle-même, elle prenne la place qu'il lui faut pour pouvoir défoncer les portes, pour pouvoir avancer et monter dans sa carrière pour qu'elle ne reste pas que dans les levels juniors, parce que c'est aussi ça la réalité. Qu'elle prétende aussi et qu'elle prenne confiance en elle d'être dans des postes d'exécutifs. Et donc tout ça, ça commence dès le plus jeune âge, de prendre confiance en elle, que ça soit dans le domaine du coding ou autre. Et donc c'est tous ces facteurs-là qui font que cette femme ingénieure va faire en sorte que cette représentativité, ben, quand elle est ingénieure, elle n'est pas juste ingénieure. Ben, elle rentre en tant qu'ingénieure junior, puis senior, puis elle va avoir des postes de leadership et des postes de responsabilité. Et elle va devenir, encore une fois, on revient aux mêmes finalités, elle va devenir un rôle modèle pour d'autres femmes ou d'autres personnes. Si je pose la question aux personnes qui nous regardent, si je vous dis quelle est votre référence aujourd'hui? Si vous nous répondez en chat, je ne crois pas que vous allez nous donner des noms de femmes. Ou bien sinon, j'espère. Est-ce que vous allez nous étonner en nous donnant des noms de femmes? Que ce soit dans le domaine de la technologie ou dans les grandes entreprises. Donnez-nous vos modèles ou vos références et on verra.
Yeah, sorry, j'ai été mutée, mais je remercie Lynn pour ce mot et on va voir si on va avoir quelques réponses sur le chat, je sais pas. Mais en tout cas, déjà, il y a quelque chose qu'on retient de. Sorry, I will switch to English, but a few things that from what you just said is that there is still work to be done for sure. That it starts, as we mentioned, with each and every one of us here talking in this panel, but also listening and also those who are not, because it's still not too late to go get them and have them also join the effort. I will maybe have Sonia, if you want to give a few last words before we end the session.
It was just an honor to take part in this discussion today. I think the fact that this discussion is happening is a sign of great changes, and yeah, just even my involvement since being invited, I just felt it's been amazing to get to know such amazing Moroccan women who are guiding these kind of discussions. And yeah, I just feel very proud to be a woman and to be connected to the Middle East as part of my heritage and see so many changes really in terms of women's empowerment. And also men being included in that. It's like everyone's growing together. I do think the expansion of technology and the internet has a big role to play in how we're all growing together and being able to share ideas. And like you said, Hind, I think women being part of the technological developments, as well as women being in the rooms where things are being discussed, you know, that society is being designed with women also at the table is really, really critical at this point in history. We need all ideas together. We cannot limit anymore because the world needs big ideas and it needs some very big and very quick solutions. And so I see bringing women into, you know, literally at the table to bring these solutions is critical right now. I don't even think it's a choice a society can make anymore. It's a duty to include women to take us where we need to be as a species and to survive the challenges we're facing. Anyway, that's a bit more esoteric. However, yeah, I'm just so happy to speak to everyone today and also to hear from you both. And if anyone would like to know more about Education for All, I'm sure we can just send out a few links so you can look at us as an example of one way of bringing a change to Moroccan society. That's through investing in girls and educating girls from very poor, remote, rural areas, so they're not forgotten. And thank you so much, everyone, for being part of this discussion. I hope that certainly what I've shared has been useful for you today.
Thank you, Sonia, and both what you shared, Hind and Sonia, was, I think, very insightful, but also inspiring to everyone listening. And we do have 2 answers, Hind, on the chat. So they're both women. So we have Jane Goodall, who is an English primatologist, and the other one is Dolly Parton.
Cool.
I think it's a good note to end this session, and I want to thank you again both for being with us today. It has been a pleasure, and to thank also everyone who has been following, listening, asking questions. Thank you for your interest. And for sure, I think there are already 2 videos that apparently we've only seen part of, so we can definitely share the full versions with anyone who is interested. And of course, more information about what Education for All does, 1337, and in general, Mohammed VI Polytechnic University, that has a good representation of women as well. In all departments. So yes, thank you, and have a great